Story 1. Lady Astor speaking to Winston Churchill. Sir, if I were your wife, I would poison your tea. Winston, Madam, if you were my wife, I would drink it. Story 2. Coworker doing all the work. Hey Craig, what is your social security number? Poor performing coworker. Why? Coworker. So I can claim you as a dependent on my taxes. Story 3. I had a stammer when I was younger. One day in class, I raised my hand to answer a question, and I stammered as I spoke. A student behind me said, "The teacher asked for an answer, not a machine gun." I do not know if anyone reading this will feel empathy for me and think this was wrong, but I have always had a sense of humor about myself, and this was very funny. It broke the tension, I laughed, and because it eased my anxiety, I delivered the answer better. Story 4. That player in a first-person shooter game was harassing a female streamer. She said something along the lines of, "I am going to date your father to give him a child that he loves." The player then became silent and left the match. Story 5. I really like he has 2 brain cells and they are both competing for 3rd place, and he could eat an apple through a tennis racket. Story 6. Mr. Madison, what you have just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now less informed for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul. Story 7. The only person who loves to see you coming is the ice cream man, his first and last stop of the day. Some kid on the bus. Story 8. I was at a gas station. The pumps were full, so I waited in line. The next pump over became free, and as the man behind them started to move up, someone came into the lot and tried to pass everyone by pulling in from the other side. The first man was not having it. He gave the car a shot of gas, and the man trying to cut in had to stop short. He rolled down his window and said, "I'm in a hurry. I need to get gas now." The first man replied, "I don't care. Wait your turn or leave." At this point, both of us noticed he could barely see over the steering wheel because he was so short. The second man, clearly upset that he couldn't just cut in, started to pull away and shouted, "Asshole!" The first man, without missing a beat, said, "Shouldn't you be in a tree baking cookies, you Keebler elf?" I spit Pepsi all over my shirt. Story 9. I used to work for an organization that collected oral history from Indigenous elders in Canada. During lunch, I would ask unrelated questions like, "What is the oldest insult you've heard?" The best answer I got was, "Your sister wears dog feces for earrings." It basically means your family is lazy and bad hunters, as a family with skilled hunters would have all the materials necessary to make earrings. Story 10. Being Irish, I have very pale skin. I went to a flat party during Freshers' Week at university, and someone said to me that I was so white the university had to admit 3 extra black people that year. Story 11. It's a clean insult, but when I was a kid, someone said, "He lost his mind when a butterfly kicked him in the head." Story 12. A drunk woman is being arrested and yelling at the police officer, "Your mother has men take advantage of her, but she is so old it is like a wagon train." I found this very funny. Story 13. A teammate on my son's hockey team once skated up to an opponent before a face-off and said, "Does your coach know you're out here?" Story 14. Meredith, you have slept with so many guys that you are starting to look like one. Boom. Roasted. Story 15. I told my husband that my gums felt irritated. He said, "That's because they have to listen to your mouth all day." Story 16. On my essay at school. There are both new ideas and fundamental truths in your writing. Sadly, what is new is not true, and what is true is not new. Story 17. At school. Obnoxious child. Leaving classroom we have a winner. Teacher. And there it goes. It was mostly the timing that got me. The teacher did not miss a beat. Story 18. Not really sure if it was an insult, but I remember one time I got into an argument with a semi-truck driver at a gas station. I went around him because I thought he cut me off, but he claimed that he was in line. However, he was parked way back and was not in line at all. So I pulled up to the pump in front of him, And then he got out, was rude to me and said, I was next in line. Then I said, what are you complaining about? You still are. Story 19. I wish that for just one time you could stand inside my shoes. You would know then what a drag it is just to see you. Bob Dylan, positively 4th Street. Story 20. Get down off your cross. Some people need the firewood, said an Italian coworker on the phone to a customer who had finally had enough of their complaining. Story 21. Horse piss guzzler. Lobotomized skunk. Bionicle fan fiction writer. And one from a conversation at work. I hope he dies of a treatable disease. Do you mean untreatable? No, I mean treatable. That way he knows how much he is hated. Story 22. My younger brother had a knack for insulting me. Two of his best were, you are so ugly you would be lucky to turn the stove on, and if you worked as a prostitute for a living you would starve to death. It is funny now but not so much when we were teenagers. Story 23. A young white girl tells her Asian friend that she looks like someone from Milan because of her small eyes. The young Asian girl tells her she looks like Cinderella's ugly stepsister. Story 24. This person is the very example of a insert profession or title here. I know this because I looked up the word model in the dictionary, and it said a non-working replica of the original. Story 25. I explained to my father last month what Stitch Fix is because of watching Jeopardy. He then said, my Stitch Fix stylist says I am a bottom lesbian about my style. He is not wrong. Story 26. Not exactly an insult and not entirely sure this is a true story, but I still love it. At a dinner party in the 1920s, a woman sitting near Calvin Coolidge said to him, I have made a bet, Mr. Coolidge, that I could get more than 2 words out of you. He replied, you lose. Story 27. The more I hear you talk about women, the more I am convinced you have never seen a vagina in real life. Story 28. One day I heard someone say, it would have been better if your father had come on the hot stovetop. Sorry, but I really don't know how to properly translate this into English. Story 29. My cousin once slept in, and my judgmental 12-year-old self said, Sleeping Beauty wakes up after 100 years, and she is not so beautiful anymore. He actually grew up to be quite a handsome man, so the joke is on me, really. Story 30. Why are you bothering me at work? I don't come down to the docks and pull sailors' cocks out of your mouth when you're working. Story 31. When camping with my family when I was a teenager, my sister said my hair was so greasy you could fry a chicken in it. I will never forget that. Story 32. Someone called a colleague Teflon because nothing was sticking to her brain. It still makes me laugh every time I remember it. Story 33. From the show Red Dwarf. Only yesterday you referred to me as a cancerous polyp on the anus of humanity. Story 34. Endure hardship and continue living instead of facing defeat, as it is far more difficult to live with that reality for the rest of your life. Story 35. Not an insult, but a reply to an insult. I will take that as a compliment when it comes from an idiot like you. Story 36. Well, do not you think highly of yourself? It was devastating, but I immediately liked this person more for taking me down a peg like that. Kind of a classy way to level someone. Story 37. Shit Rooster was featured in Todd and the Book of Pure Evil. Not an advertisement. Admittedly, it is obviously just a variation of Shitbird, but still. Story 38. 15 to 17 years ago, one night I was drunk with my friend. A woman tripped, and I laughed like the immature 20 to 21-year-old I was. She snapped, "At least I don't have a messed up nose." I laughed so hard. I deserved that. I do have a big nose. Story 39. Jack Nicholson in a movie called Going South. An old lady was looking down her nose at Jack, and he said, "I wouldn't take you to a dog fight if you were the defending champion." Story 40. You look like you do not know how to read. When they then take something out and read it to prove you wrong. Okay, but that does not change that you look like you do not know how to read. Story 41. I knew a girl who would not stop talking about her boyfriend, saying how handsome he was. She said to me, "Look at him. He is that hot." That you would turn gay for him? I said no, but I would for you. Story 42. I don't remember the first part, but the add-on comment will stick with me. A woman was arguing with a Make America Great Again supporter about something. It ended with her calling him something like a heartless idiot. She then added, "And I hope you stub your toe." What a great petty way to end an argument. Story 43. Hey Laser Lips. Your mother was a snowblower. From the film Short Circuit, one robot insulting another. Story 44. Worked with one of those holier-than-thou types. Could never do anything wrong and constantly spoke down to everyone. During a morning meeting, our foreman said, "Shut up. If you were half as good as you thought you were, you would be twice as good as you are." Classic. I have since used it myself when I have had the opportunity. Story 45. A new employee joined our construction company. He was ineffective, limping after a few days due to blisters and struggling with all tasks. The owner of the company, a 70-year-old man, observed him one day and asked, "Is it as painful being you as it is watching you?" Story 46. My favorite line from a movie is, "Oh Benson, dear Benson, you are so mercilessly free of the ravages of intelligence." Story 47. There is no question that the most profound insult ever created is, "Your mother was a hamster, and your father smelled of elderberries." Story 48. My girlfriend worked for an entertainment agent, and the pub landlord's assessment of a singer she had recommended was, "He should not have been born." Story 49. What are you? Some kind of clown? I love this one because it is a double insult. Not only are they a clown, but they are not even one of the better-known clowns. Story 50. A kid in 7th grade eats cookies a girl he hated baked. He did not know she baked them. He loved them. He found out she baked them. EW. I would rather hurt myself than eat something Alicia made. He screamed. It was kind of funny. The cookies were good. And Alicia was a good person. Everybody liked her except that boy. That boy had also bullied me throughout elementary school. Story 51. Television critic Victor Lewis Smith, describing a particularly unattractive man. "Oh my God. It must be a face. It has ears." Story 52. I would not remember your name if it was not written on a slip of paper that I keep in my pocket at all times. Greg Davies to Alex Horn on Taskmaster. Story 53. My dad once called me an ungrateful little toad. Imagine it in a Brummy accent. Hurtful at the time, but hilarious in hindsight. He really does have a way with words. He had ordered a tray full of shots. I was already hammered and couldn't handle more. He decided that me not helping drink them was ungrateful. I was vindicated the next morning when I was only mildly hungover and everyone else was dying. Story 54. My child's father laughed really hard at me, mocking something someone always used to say to bait people into reacting and doing foolish things. "You were gonna come out on top. Top bunk, maybe." Story 55. The stand-up comedian Ross Noble told a story about a drunk Australian woman who was asked for her opinion of a man. She mixed two metaphors and ended up saying, "I wouldn't have sex with him if he were on fire." Story 56. I was riding the Dallas area rapid transit public transit here in Dallas, and there was a group of teenagers. One young man was trying to flirt with some girl, and she went off on him. The only thing I remember is that he was wearing a Hugo Boss beanie, and she told him, "I'll slap you so hard, it'll send that BO and probably an S flying off that hat." Story 57. I know it is a famous saying now, but when I first heard, "I have been called worse by better people than you," when a fraternity brother struck out with a girl who was just far out of his league, my jaw dropped in awe. Story 58. Tell me, did they ever catch that farmer? Which farmer? The one who drove over your face with his tractor. Story 59. New at a job, I had taken over a mess and was slowly straightening it out. The old head of accounting walked into the shipping and receiving area, looked around, walked up to me, blew cigar smoke in my face, flicked ashes on my shoes and said, "I have seen better run establishments." Story 60. I heard this once, almost 50 years ago, from a child in elementary school. "I hate you more than a cold toilet seat." Story 61. A politician here in Quebec said in French about another that he was not the sharpest tool in the box, meaning he was not very intelligent. Story 62. I remember a long time ago I was driving around with my friends when a man cut us off in traffic. Things got heated, and the man started chasing us around town. Eventually, I took a quick right turn, and just as we were about to lose him, my friend leaned out the window and yelled, "It's because of people like you." I still think that was an amazing line. Story 63. All that you say is railing and in error. That is stinking wind, such as the jay lets fly when too hard girt upon full belly. I have considered you now. I shall consider you no more. One of a pair of mathematicians involved in a public squabble about squaring the circle. Story 64. Two statements that stand out to me. Did your mother have any children who survived? And you are the perfect example for supporting the legalization of abortion. Story 65. When a coworker was told, "Fuck you," by a rude customer, the coworker screamed, "Come and fuck me yourself, you coward." And that phrase lives rent-free in my head to this day. Story 66. I once heard an elderly man say, "You are such a dumb person." But it was the way he said it, with a sense of wonder, as if he was fascinated by it. I have been waiting for a chance to use that ever since. Story 67. My then husband said to me while I was pregnant, "I hope our baby has my looks and your brain." This actually was not the reason we got a divorce. I thought it was too funny. Story 68. We were on a job site, just regular guys talking, and someone asked the question, "How much would it cost for you to perform oral sex to completion?" The answers varied until one super macho drywaller and steel stud framer said, "That's not something I would do for any money." Without missing a beat, my foreman yelled, "You would do it for free." That was the biggest burn that guy ever received, in front of at least 20 other guys who all pointed and laughed. Rent-free in my head. And it's been nearly 15 years. Story 69. A woman's ex was trying to talk negatively to the new guy and asked him how his leftovers felt. The new guy said, "After two, it felt brand new." Story 70. Murray Walker, Formula One commentator, said of Ralph Schumacher, "He is not even the best driver in his own house." Story 71. Two people passed in a narrow hallway. One hurriedly said, "Excuse me." The other responded, "There is no excuse for you. Condoms were invented long before you were conceived." Best fight I have ever seen. Story 72. Two thoughts come to mind. 1. You would be out of your depth in a parking lot puddle. 2. You have delusions of adequacy. Story 73. One person said to another at work, "Stop trying to act cool. I remember when you were licking the windows on the short bus." Story 74. Judge. I hear you're a sharp golfer. I'm no slouch myself. Chase. Don't sell yourself short. Judge. You're a tremendous golfer. Story 75. Let me make it quite clear that I am in favor of abortion and, in your case, sir, we should make it retrospective. I am a country member. I remember. Story 76. On a building site one day, two guys were subbed into the job, and the foreman did not like them, so he started mouthing off at them. One of the guys went on a big rant at the foreman, calling him all sorts of names. He ended his rant by calling him a rude word. The other guy stopped the first guy and said, "That's not right. He isn't that rude word. He is far too useless." Not really bad words in it, but it cut to the bone. Story 77. Clearly, you have the intelligence of a half-eaten Pop-Tart. I overheard this between a pharmacy technician and a man without insurance who wanted to pay out of pocket for his erectile dysfunction medication, but not his heart medication. It has become one of my favorites since then. Story 78. A non-white child called me, a white teenager, fat. "Yo, look out for Moby Dick over there," while pointing at me. They correctly referenced classic literature just for the punchline of white whale. I kind of loved it. I cried at the time, but that is not important. Story 79. Oh, you people are slow. Bringing you up to speed is like trying to explain Norway to a dog. Jackson Lamb in Slow Horses. Story 80. If you want my comeback, You will have to scrape it off the back of your mother's teeth. Thank you, Jimmy Carr. Story 81. This takes a little setup and is maybe a better comeback than an insult. At our junior high, the janitor used green sweep, a sweeping compound that he pushed in front of the broom. My best friend got some of it in our shop class and rolled it up in notebook paper pretending to smoke it. The teacher said, "Does your mother know you smoke floor sweeper?" My best friend responded, "My mama grows floor sweeper." Story 82. There were identical twins at our school. One of them was walking across the stage when someone shouted, "Your brother is really ugly." Even he laughed at that. Story 83. I have neither the time nor the crayons to explain it to you. Pushing onto new frontiers of incompetence. Story 84. Said to me by a 12-year-old in our camp program over 10 years ago. Yeah, well, at least I can reach the top shelf. Story 85. I had a friend in high school named Charlie. He was about 4 feet 10 inches tall, and the captain of the football team had cocked his arm back, threatening to throw a salad at Charlie. Charlie looked at him and said, "You better hold on to that salad. Your mother is going to need the vinegar tonight." We all burst out laughing. The captain turned bright red, sat down, and was quiet. Story 86. A man at work has a large nose. He and a coworker had an argument, and the coworker told him he could smell a Sunday roast cooking on Wednesday. Story 87. From Patrick O'Brien's HMS Surprise. Matron describes a despised future mother-in-law as the most unromantic beast that ever urged its squat, thick bulk across the face of the protesting earth. Story 88. Wisdom has been chasing you, but you have always been quicker. I cannot remember where I read it first, but I like this one. Story 89. A mother would not buy this child a toy, and he screamed, "You are a chicken nugget," at her. It was the best insult I have heard to this day. Story 90. I have 3 current favorites living rent-free in my brain. First, from Star Trek, The Next Generation, ugly bags of mostly water. Second, from The Three Amigos, son of a motherless goat. Third, and I do not recall where I heard this one, waste of skin. Story 91. A student in high school called another a cross-eyed slapper. It was a devastating blow to that person's soul. Story 92. It's not really an insult, but close to one. I worked with a lady who had a rather forceful personality. After a particularly snappy telephone call with a customer, a male colleague said under his breath, "When I grow up, I want to have courage just like her." Story 93. This is from a video game, Fire Emblem Echoes, Shadows of Valentia to be exact, but it still stands out to me. Fernan. I'll rip that traitorous tongue from your throat, Lucas. Then you'll finally have the truth in your grasp. Goes hard, especially with the voice acting. Story 94. Not mine, but a friend's. He was a gate agent for a regional airline on the West Coast, and several flights were delayed or canceled because of Bay Area fog. This was before widespread computer use. Needless to say, passengers were getting unruly. One man angrily told him he needed to work faster or he would miss his flight. My friend responded, "Back off, will you? I don't come down to 7-Eleven and tell you how to adjust the Slurpee machine. Do I?" Silence. Story 95. For guys who wear really tight shirts, what size is that? A medium? Are you wearing a rash guard? Story 96. When I was in high school, a guy in my class was putting tobacco in his mouth, and one of the girls said, "EW, that stuff is disgusting. How can you put that in your mouth?" He looked at her while packing his tobacco and, without missing a beat, said, "You put dicks in your mouth." Story 97. A fight occurred on our street, and the man shouted at one of the 2 women, "Yeah? Well, you perform oral sex for money." It was pure poetry. Then he drove off, came back again, and tried to run one of them over on a lawn. It was an interesting summer. Story 98. Telling someone that their village called and they want their fool back. The man was so ignorant that he did not understand it. Story 99. I'm sorry if this is a bit personal rather than offensive. Back when I was a medic, my partner told a firefighter as a joke, "You're like herpes. I don't deal with you often, But when you come around, you're irritating as hell. Story 100. I hope everyone you hold dear experiences a slow and painful death in your arms. I have had years since then, and I fail to come up with something more vile to wish upon someone. This easily falls into the category, wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy. Story 101. When I was in 8th grade, a fellow student said something like, "How do you like that?" to me on the playground, and I yelled back, "How would you like your back broken so you could suck your own self?" Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.